Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I have a new book for you today. The book is called Nobody Hugs a Cactus. It's one of my new favorites. If you're a student at Troy School, you may have heard me read this book to you. The book takes place in the desert, and many of the characters are desert creatures. There's a lizard, and a tortoise, a coyote, a hare, and even a tumbleweed. Now, we may not know a lot about tumbleweeds in our area, so I'll tell you a little bit about them. They come from a plant called the Russian thistle. It grows very quickly into this big bushy plant. It has thorns and pretty flowers. In the fall, the plant dies and it breaks off the ground. And the wind will send this bushy plant rolling and tumbling across the field where it drops its seeds. It's actually an adaptation of the plant. It's made to do just that, roll and tumble along so it can drop its seeds. Rosie the tumbleweed is a very important character in this book. In many books, there is a character that does a lot of changing. As a matter of fact, in many books, that is the story. A character going through some changes. In this book, Hank goes through some changes. As you listen to the story, see if you can figure out what changes does Hank go through and what causes his changes. I hope you enjoy the story.
Nobody Hugs a Cactus by Carter Goodrich. Hank lived in a pot. The pot sat in a window. The window looked out at the empty desert. It was hot, dry, peaceful, and quiet, just the way Hank liked it. But every now and then, somebody would interrupt Hank's peace and quiet. "Hi, Hank," Rosie the tumbleweed called out. "Isn't it a beautiful day?" Hank ignored her. He just wanted to be left alone. "Okay, so long," said Rosie cheerfully, and she tumbled away. Hank was happy again. But just as he was beginning to relax, "Hello!" shouted a tortoise. "Private property!" yelled Hank. "Keep out!" The tortoise was so frightened he hid in his shell. Hank was still yelling at the tortoise when a jackrabbit dashed by. "Hiya, Prickles!" she shouted. "My name isn't Prickles," Hank yelled back. "And stay out of my yard!" "Tumbleweeds, tortoises, jackrabbits, what's next?" said Hank. A coyote came loping by. "No dogs allowed!" Hank yelled. "I'm not a dog," said the coyote, "and you are as prickly on the inside as you are on the outside." Before Hank could yell back at the coyote, a cowboy strode past. "Keep off the grass!" shouted Hank. "What grass?" said the cowboy. "Seems to me somebody needs a hug. Too bad nobody hugs a cactus." "Hi," said a lizard. "Who invited you?" said Hank. "And just in case you're wondering, I don't want a hug." "That's good," said the lizard, "because I don't want to give you one." Then he skittered away. An owl landed on the roof. "If you're looking for a hug," said Hank, "well, I guess I could give you one." "Who, me?" said the owl. "You must be joking." And for the first time, Hank began to feel a little lonely. The next morning, Hank was feeling more sad on the inside than prickly. Maybe a hug wouldn't be so bad after all. The wind began to pick up. An old cup blew by and stuck to Hank's face. His arms were too short to get it off. "Great," said Hank. After a while, Rosie came bouncing by. "I'll get it off you, Hank," she shouted, and she jumped up to knock the cup off Hank's face. Then she tumbled away. Hank didn't have time to thank Rosie. He felt bad about all the other times he had been so rude to her. So he came up with a plan. Hank decided to grow the best flower he could and then give it to Rosie as a thank you gift. It took days, but at last it was ready. He couldn't wait for Rosie to pass by again. When at last she finally did come bouncing back, Hank held out the flower. "Look, Rosie," he said. "I grew it just for you." Rosie was so surprised. She jumped up and gave Hank a great big hug. It felt so nice. Hank didn't want to let go. And as things turned out, he couldn't. Rosie and Hank had become stuck together. But they didn't care. After all, it's better to be stuck in a hug than stuck all alone.
Did you enjoy the story? Did you notice the changes that Hank went through and maybe what caused them? Teachers will often ask you at the end of a story, so what changes did the character go through? What caused the changes? When we answer that question, we may start it off something like this. In the beginning of the story, notice how I started in the beginning of the story, right? Because we are talking about character change. So a character changes from the beginning to the end. I'm going to go back to the answer to my question. In the beginning of the story, Hank was angry and mean. Toward the middle, he started getting lonely and sad because nobody would give him a hug. But by the end, he was very happy because his friend Rosie gave him a hug. Notice again, when I answered that question, I referenced the beginning of the story and some changes that happened in the middle and how he felt at the end. I really hope you enjoyed listening to the story, and I hope to see you soon. Please be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and take care.